welcome back. This is the motherfucking Gentleman's Talk podcast. Like I said, I'll be all over Connecticut. We'll be in New York. Shout out to Harlem. I'll be back and forth every 2 weeks. For those that really know me, we have a beautiful guest today's on Gentleman's Talk podcast, the second female. So shout out to the females now starting to pop up on the Gentleman's Talk podcast. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Marisol Garcia. I am very big in the advocacy legal space here in Connecticut. I am formerly incarcerated, and that's exactly the audience I generally speak for. I make a table for us and make sure our voices are heard at the table.
Shout out to that. So now we're going to tap into the motherfucking Gentleman's Talk podcast. First question, give us a little background on who you are.
As I said, I'm justice impacted. I actually did something like a combined time between probation, parole, and actual time, about 22 years. I've lived in Connecticut most of my life. Been in Hartford probably the last 5 years since I've been home. I'm actually starting my second year of law school at Vermont Law.
That's what's up.
And I graduated from Trinity with my undergrad and master's in 22-23, as well as the fact that as I constantly say, I speak for the voice of those that are still inside and those who are home. We will make sure our voice is heard at the table.
Well, we appreciate that. Shout out to that. So Marisol, give us an incarcerated story for those that don't need to be going to jail, and if they do go to jail, give us some direction to make them want to direct on the right path in your perspective.
Oh, Connecticut has always swung from a rehabilitative state to a punitive state, meaning that, you know, you do time here in Connecticut, and sometimes you can get lucky where you're under either the commissioner or the Department of Corrections, and it's more rehabilitation where you're able to go to school. You know, the mental health programming is what it should be. Jail is more to rehabilitate you to come home and make sure you're a productive member of society. Then there are those times where you're dealing with the punitive system, which makes you feel day for day, second for second. And the way you went in is not the way you come home. People come home in pieces. People come home more broken than when they entered inside.
Wow.
And I say this because I've had friends who did 20, 25, 30, and more years in prison.
So
When they were young, you know, they were very young juveniles when they entered. Unfortunately, Connecticut was one of those states that believed, you know, they'll lock them up, throw them away the key. You know, it wasn't until in the last 10 years, actually under Governor Malloy, where they did the Second Chance Act, as well as doing the juvenile laws that changed it, where through neuroscience, they knew that the kids who were being locked up, their brains don't develop the same way. They're not adults, they're children on top of that. So there's no way you can give life without parole or life in prison or a long sentence to a young person and expect them like to fully understand when they were 15, 16, 17, when they made their mistakes up until the age of 25. The mind isn't fully developed until it's 25.
That's really
So,
true.
you know, Vera did a Restoring Promise initiative here in Connecticut. We were the first site with the men and the women.
Okay.
And with that, we've had some people come home since then, since 2018, 2019, and beyond.
Oh, wow.
People who were sentenced who were never meant to see the light of day after, you know, getting 55 years,
That's
coming
crazy.
home after 25, or making parole, because now they do juvenile parole where they see you ahead of time at 60% of your time. But, you know, when I talk about people coming home in pieces, I literally mean that. There are some people who go into prison, you know, we all remember what it was like during COVID. COVID was a rough factor for everybody out here. I had just come home when COVID hit.
Wow.
So then there were people, I had friends who died inside, who were sick multiple times with COVID. We all remember DOC was like, oh, you know, they're bringing it in. No, we're not bringing it in. The criminal system shut down pretty much during COVID, and then there was staff coming back and forth and bringing it into the facility, getting people sick. A lot of people died as a result of that. There were some people who, because of the compromised immune system, you know, having asthma, whatever, something happened, the staff was short. People ended up paying with their lives, unfortunately, and you know that alone tells you what healthcare is like here in Connecticut in the prison. But to tell you about, nobody wants to do that kind of time, because here's the thing: prison incarceration is an experience that, unless you've been through the system and you've been in prison, you never fully understand the trauma that causes your brain. And you are never exactly the same. It doesn't, even if you went in for 30 days, 60 days, that's a short time, you're impacted and you have PTSD within your own right. Because where else are you going to go and get sexually assaulted by having someone strip you naked? You spread yourself, male or female.
Yes.
And they invade you.
And coffee and call.
Exactly. They invade your personal space in more ways than you've ever known.
That's
And
great.
then you shower in front of a bunch of strangers as they stare and gawk at you.
That's wild.
So how is that not intrusive?
Well, like she said, that was really deep right there. And hopefully, when y'all watch that, all I can say is very deep. Make sure y'all motherfucker watch that shit. So on to the next question on the Gentleman's Talk podcast. Do you know who the 44th president is?
No.
It's Barack Obama. This is an urban network, so now you know.
You would think I would know that. I was incarcerated at the time.
So now you know Barack Obama was the 44th president, and shout out to that. So on to the next topic on the Gentleman's Talk podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with the situation, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Tupac Shakur, you know, he died. Tupac, he died. KBD told a detective that Vlad is a detective that was with police. All this is on the internet. KBD told Vlad that he gave the gun to Orlando Lane. Orlando Lane was supposed to be his nephew. And Orlando Lane was supposed to be the one that kills Tupac. But even though Tupac died, Orlando Lane ended up dying. How do you feel about people giving family members giving people's guns to kill other people in society or just in general?
There's that intergenerational problem that what I was talking about earlier. It's that if I'm going to do bad, I'm going to take somebody else down with me. And I think it's that kind of mentality that makes it so hard when there's so many people of color. Doesn't matter whether you're Latino or Black, African American, it doesn't really matter. It's when you cannot see someone else not falling into the same trap you did, it's very easy to bring someone else into that with you. Whether it's family, friend, or otherwise, our prison system is full of people who they were friends have died as a result of that, or they've got family who are doing time.
True.
So unfortunately, that is the way where that crab mentality works. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me, and if I'm not going down, you're going to go down.
That's how it usually goes. But pay attention, people. That's all I can say. Suge Knight, obviously, you're probably from that era. Suge Knight said in LA that he can't be touched by no gang members. How do you feel about a person saying that they can never be touched in general, violence or just saying that they can't, nothing can't happen to them? What is your perspective on that?
That's delusionary, because it doesn't really matter whether, even if you're in that life or not, and I've not been in that life, but I have friends who have. There's a certain code of doing things. Every dog has its day. Whether you think you're the highest exec at like Suge Knight was, or whether you think you are untouchable because you've done that life, understand something with it. It's not your own, it'll be somebody else. Nobody is beyond the touch of violence. It will impact you whether personally or somebody you love. It's not necessarily true.
That's very true. P. Diddy said in 1996, 1997, he doesn't care if Big or Tupac died. What's your opinion on that situation? Not saying what's going on with P. Diddy now. Obviously, he might reap what he sows, but what's your perspective on Tupac and Biggie dying and P. Diddy saying he don't care if either of those two people die and they made him rich?
Well, it tells you that's almost how the unfortunate part of when we look at how capitalistic our society has become is no different. He's managed to make money off the backs of his very own. So, two of his cash cows died, so what? Moves on to the next.
It's kind of fucked up, though.
Human nature.
It's very true. What does family mean to you?
That's a complicated question. I used to believe family was those, it didn't have to be someone you were born with, it's someone who, through experience, you guys have proven to have that kind of, that blood bigger than water kind of situation. Unfortunately, I've also come to realize sometimes your family, whether it's the one you make or the one you're born with, not always the best place for you to have.
Facts. Very true. R.I.P. to Kevin Samuels. Do you know who Kevin Samuels is?
Name sounds familiar, but not exact.
So we're going to skip that. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. How do you feel about the LGBTQ community being in our local public schools?
Considering my older brother is gay, it's one of those things where I grew up in a generation where, the LGBT at that time was still in the closet. They were very much beaten upon. I grew up during that generation. It was the height of the AIDS epidemic where it was just becoming a public health problem. But, we've gotten that under control. They're no different than anybody else who lives like everybody else.
Right.
I think, live and let live, but everybody has different opinions on that. I personally, I have family and friends who are.
My brother was like, one of my brothers was like that, so don't bother me, don't bother me. So that's about it. How do you feel about today's upbringing with young youth that you see walking around in society when you're in your journeys?
Oh, that's a tough one because sometimes, you want them to be these young people, have these creative moments and to be who they are. You want them to have that freedom. But this generation is nothing like it was when I grew up, or even prior to that. This is a dangerous generation, and I don't mean in the sense that, you know, they all carry guns. There is that too. But when I say the dangerous generation, it's this fact that these are people that do not, and this generation does not have that. They didn't have the same experiences we did, so they don't really understand sometimes what true safety is, or what real family is, or other things. You know, this is the generation that was brought up with everybody gets an award, everybody, you know, it's very different for them. And I'm not sure if I feel bad for them in a sense, because their experiences will not be like what mine were, or even behind, you know, prior to me and after. But I think it's one of these things where I envy them because of the generation we grew up in, because they have technology and everything else at their fingertips. But I also feel bad for them for that very reason, because they did not grow up at a time where technology wasn't the driving force. They are socially awkward children that don't necessarily have, I mean, let's be realistic.
She said socially
They
awkward
are.
children.